Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Pesachim. We are up to Perik Bet, Mishnah Bet. Today's Mishnah should be Leilu Nishmat Neria Ben Svetlana Ranbayev Neliyahu Ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam Began Eden Amen. The Mishnah begins Chametz Shel Nochri Shavar Alav Pesach. Chametz that was owned by a non-Jew during Pesach, Mutar Bana'ah. It is permitted with respect to benefit, meaning one may benefit from it after Pesach. Now the Rav explains, Lav lememra da bechila asur. Now generally, when the Mishnah says mutar bana'ah, that usually means that all types of benefit are permitted except eating. So the Rav tells us, in this situation, that is not the case. A person may even eat the chametz of a non-Jew after Pesach. Ela aiti dibai limitna seifa v'shel Yisrael asur bana'ah. Since the next case of the Mishnah wanted to write Asur Bana'ah, the Mishnah in the first case copied the language. It's a stylistic way of writing. And the Rav gives an alternative explanation. Inami, alternatively, Mishum de'ike nehagi isur b'pacha nochri, because there are some that are noheg isur by the bread of a goy. Mishumachi, therefore, lo tani b'edei chametz shenochri. The Mishnah didn't write the chametz of an non-Jew is mutar b'achila, because some people don't eat the chametz, don't eat the bread of a goy. Therefore, it said mutar bana'ah. Different explanations why the Mishnah chose that language. The Mishnah continues, v'shel Yisrael, but chametz that was owned by a Jew during Pesach, asur bana'ah. It is prohibited with respect to benefit after Pesach, meaning one may not benefit from it after Pesach. Shene'emar, because the pasuk says in Sefer Shemot, Chapter 13, Pasuk 7, Lo yera'eh lecha se'or. Leaven should not be seen in your possession, meaning to say, since the Torah forbids a Jew to have chametz in his possession during Pesach, the rabbis punished violators of this law by making their chametz forbidden even after Pesach. And that is the end of Mishnah Bet. Mishnah Gimel now discusses the law of chametz that was used as security for a loan. Its first case is as follows. A Jew borrowed money from a non-Jew before Pesach and agreed to pay it back after Pesach. He deposited some chametz in the house of the non-Jew before Pesach as a security, saying that if he does not repay the loan on time, the non-Jew will acquire the chametz as payment for the debt retroactively, meaning from the time the loan was made. So the Mishnah begins, Nochi she'ilva et Yisrael al chametzo. If a non-Jew lent a Jew money before Pesach, relying on the Jew's chametz, meaning the Jew left chametz as a security with the non-Jewish lender, achara Pesach mutar bana'ah. The law is that if the Jew fails to repay the loan on time, the chametz is permitted with respect to benefit after Pesach, because since the Jew did not pay on time, it retroactively became the property of the non-Jew from before the holiday of Pesach, and it is therefore permitted after Pesach. Now, the commentators explain that this law does not apply unless the chametz was in the house of the non-Jew on Pesach. If the Jew had kept it in his house during that time, he would be responsible for keeping it safe, and that responsibility would suffice for it to be considered Jewish-owned chametz, which is prohibited after Pesach. Therefore, the chametz is permitted only if two conditions were met. Number one, it retroactively became the non-Jew's property from before Pesach, and number two, it was in his house during the holiday, in the non-Jew's house. Now the Mishnah gives the reverse case. If a Jew lent a non-Jew money before Pesach, relying on the non-Jew's chametz, meaning the non-Jew left chametz as a security with the Jew, achara Pesach asur bana'ah. The law is that if the non-Jew fails to repay the loan on time, the chametz is prohibited for benefit after Pesach because it retroactively became the property of the Jew from before Pesach. And having been owned by a Jew during Pesach, it is prohibited after the holiday. And the commentators explain here too, the chametz must have been in the house of the lender, meaning in this case the Jew's house during Pesach. Only then would it be considered Jewish-owned chametz. If the non-Jewish borrower had kept it in his house, the Jew would not become the owner until he collects it, although they had agreed that the chametz would become the property of the Jewish lender retroactively from before Pesach. That would not work in this case because a Jew cannot acquire something from a non-Jew through the exchange of money alone. We call ma'ot enan konot. Rather, he must also take it into his possession. Therefore, had it remained in the non-Jew's house, it would not belong to the Jew until he collects it after Pesach, and it would not be Jewish-owned chametz on Pesach. But if the Jew collected the chametz before the holiday by taking it into his house, he would indeed acquire it retroactively upon the non-Jew's failure to pay, and it would therefore be forbidden after Pesach. And the Mishnah now deals with another matter, chametz shenafla alav mapolet. Chametz upon which a ruined collapsed and was buried under a pile of rubble, under a pile of rubble. Halehu chimvoar. It is regarded as if it were destroyed and no longer in the owner's possession, meaning he is not obligated to dig out the chametz and destroy it, as the Tzvah said points out. Now the rabbis learned from a pasuk in the Torah that if one owns chametz that cannot be removed except with difficulty, he does not violate the prohibition of owning chametz on Pesach. Nevertheless, the Rav writes the rabbis required the owner to nullify the chametz, because if he does not, and the chametz happens to be unearthed on Pesach, and he fails to destroy it right away, he would violate the biblical prohibition. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, Kol she'en ha'kelev yachol lechapes acharav. The chametz is considered destroyed and no longer in the owner's possession only if it's buried so deeply that a dog is unable to smell it and therefore cannot search for and unearth it. Now, for this law to apply, the chametz must be at least 3 tefachim below the surface. If it were buried less than 3 tefachim deep, a dog might sniff it out and unearth it, causing its owner to be in violation of the prohibition against possessing chametz. The owner must therefore dig out the chametz himself before Pesach and destroy it to ensure that he will not transgress the prohibition. Now, even if he had nullified the chametz, he must still search for and destroy it before Pesach, because nullification alone is not enough. In the case of chametz, it has a strong chance of being found on Pesach. And that is it, Rabotai, of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.